What's up, Science Fam? In the last video, we talked about a few of the respiratory systems we find in different animals. We talked about insects and how they pump it in order to pump the air through their body. And we talked about the lungfish, which has primitive lungs. This time, we're going to talk about birds and other such creatures. So for birds, they fly through the air. So how are they supposed to breathe when the air is just smashing into their face constantly? And when there's very little oxygen high up in the higher atmosphere. So what they do in order to adapt is that they have a one-way flow of air. How does that happen? What does that do? So you can see in this GIF and in this explanation that the one-way flow is that even if it goes through the same nostrils, the same tube, initial tube, it flows in one direction. So it flows in and then down to the bottom, and then it gets pumped into the actual lungs and then out through the mouth. So it flows in just one direction, and that enables the birds to also set up a counter-current exchange. Since the air is flowing in one direction, you can make the blood flow in that one direction as well. That allows opposite flow of the air and the blood, so the counter-current exchange increases the efficiency of getting oxygen from the upper atmosphere. Okay? Alright. Humans are capable of doing something similar. We call it circular breathing. So that's when we inhale and blow out air at the same time. This is very useful for music. So in music, your woodwind instruments and your brass instruments, you have to have very sustained notes in certain pieces. So they inhale through their nose and they blow out air stored in their cheeks in order to sustain a consecutive note, or a very, very long note. So they can breathe while blowing out air through the cheeks, and then once that's empty, you just get more air from the lungs and so on. So it's very similar to the one-way flow of birds. For amphibians, the ones that live on land and water, they breathe in a special way, and they need to be moist for that to happen. So for amphibians like frogs, you have two special adaptations. First, there's buccal pumping. For a lot of frogs and toads, they can pump air into the floor of their mouth, their buccal cavity, and then shove that air into their lungs. So that's what we call positive pressure, when you shove or when you blow air into a certain area. Another adaptation they have is cutaneous respiration. That's a complicated term for breathing through their skin. So by keeping their skin thin and moist, they can actually allow air to exchange with their skin itself, their actual outer skin. So again, frogs and toads and many other amphibians, they can breathe by shoving air into their lungs through positive pressure, or breathing through their skin, or cutaneous respiration. So now let's talk about how people breathe. How do we get oxygen from the air? So we get oxygen from the air through our lungs. So the respiratory system of reptiles and mammals uses an infolding of the body that forms little pockets. So it's like a sac within our chest cavity, and that sac also has even tinier sacs. So all of these tiny sacs increase surface area and allows us to have more efficient air exchange or gas exchange. So what are the parts of our respiratory system? Where does the air go when we breathe it? So there's a lot of parts that we can discuss actually, but let's narrow this down to just this. So first off, we're supposed to breathe in our air from our external nares. So that's a complicated term for our nostrils. External nares, or our nostrils. We breathe in through there. We can breathe in through our mouth, but that's not recommended because your mouth cannot defend you from particulate matter. Your mouth doesn't have tiny hairs that protect you from pollution. Your nose, on the other hand, has nose hairs or cilia that protect you from that. So you breathe into your nose, and then it goes into the pharynx, the cavity behind the nose or mouth. So this is the pharynx. So one way to remember that pharynx is the first thing is, it sounds like F, pharynx first. And after that is larynx, larynx last. Your larynx is actually the voice box. It's not really a box, it's a set of vocal cords. Just like with your string instruments like the guitar, when you strum it by having air go through it, it tends to make a vibration that comes off as sound. After that, we have the airways, the trachea, the bronchi, and the bronchioles. Your trachea is the main airway. You can see it here. That's the trachea. And then you have your bronchi, the first fork in the road. And then your bronchioles, the tinier esquinitas or roadways inside your lungs. Now, your lungs, being the big air balloons that they are, they have smaller sacs inside them called alveoli. Alveoli is the plural term. The singular term is alveolus. So they're air sacs for gas exchange, and we'll take a closer look at them later. The diaphragm is considered part of the respiratory system, even if it's actually a muscle. So it's a muscle for inhaling and exhaling. You can see it here. And it's also the reason why in choir or in singing or in PE, you're taught to breathe properly by expanding by moving your diaphragm instead of trying to expand your chest. So how does that happen? So breathing, our method of ventilation, it's the alternating inhaling and exhaling of air. Inhaling is taking air in, and exhaling making air exit our body. So we control the flow of air using the diaphragm. So this muscle contracts when we inhale. So again, it contracts when we inhale, meaning it exerts effort when we inhale. And when we exhale, it relaxes. So how this works is that the inhalation, it contracts, meaning it pulls. It pulls on the chest cavity. So when it pulls on the chest cavity, when we inhale, it's not just your chest that should rise, it should be a bit of your belly rising. So if we look at the full screen, move the camera there. When we breathe in the way that is not so correct, we just go like, we're literally just pushing our chest muscles. It's not helping. We need to breathe properly. We need to control our diaphragm over here. So it should be rising starting from here, not just your chest going up and down. It should start from here. So when your coach or when your choir instructor asks you to breathe starting from below your chest with your belly, they're asking you to move your diaphragm like so the entire thing is rising and falling, not just the chest. It also includes part of the upper belly. All right? Going back. So what happens with the exchange? How does the exchange happen in our alveolus or alveoli or the lungs? So what's happening is that your alveoli, the tiny sacs, they're surrounded by capillaries. So we should remember that from last week. These are the blood vessels that are tiny and specialized for gas exchange. So the erythrocytes or the red blood vessels in your capillaries release the carbon dioxide and take in the oxygen, through the walls of the capillary and the alveoli. So the high surface area again gives better rate of exchange of gases. Alright? So don't forget your surface area, very important concept. So have you ever tried holding your breath though? So it's literally impossible for you to hold your breath for longer than a few minutes. You'll either have to breathe, you're going to have an irresistible urge to breathe, or if you're unconscious, or if you really try to force yourself not to breathe, you'll pass out, and then while you're unconscious, you will start breathing normally. So why does that happen? So we have an autonomic control of breathing, meaning you don't really have to think about breathing. You can control your diaphragm manually if you really need to, but even without thinking about it, you can control your breathing. Your brain saves you from asphyxiating or from knocking yourself out by not breathing using these steps. First, higher carbon dioxide. When you're not breathing, there's lots of carbon dioxide in your blood. And that higher carbon dioxide actually lowers the pH of your blood, so it becomes more acidic. If your blood is more acidic, it sends a signal to your medulla. It's a part in your brain, somewhere around here, part of your brain stem. So the medulla sends signals to your diaphragm. It's like, hey, this guy is not breathing properly. Diaphragm, do your thing. So you end up wanting to, or actually breathing faster. So again, the signal is from lower pH or acidic pH in your blood due to the higher carbon dioxide content. Alright, so you literally cannot forget to breathe. But sometimes it's good to remind yourself anyway, especially those who are afflicted with anxiety. So the reminder is to breathe. So you can use this kind of diagram in order to control your breathing. To bring you to a more harmonious, controlled breathing. So you breathe in, and then you breathe out. This GIF is synced to what is the average full tidal volume or full rate of breathing to fill your lungs, and then breathe out efficiently and in a controlled manner. So when we breathe in a controlled manner, we allow us to control our emotions, control our physical processes in the body. So even if there is an autonomic control of our breathing, we ourselves can choose how to control that based on our will. That's how powerful our will is. And that concludes our topic for this week. I'll see you guys in the next topic. See ya.